now Nicaragua is also, and these governments, these socialist governments, have been implanted by, supported by Cuba, which is in turn supported by Russia. If you want to talk about Russian meddling, if you want to talk about Russian collusion, that's where it's going on in Nicaragua right now. Daniel Ortega, and let's remember, Daniel Ortega was the sweetheart of the left, okay? Do not forget this. Bernie Sanders loved him some Daniel Ortega. Bill de Blasio in New York loved him some Daniel Ortega. John Kerry loved Daniel Ortega. And listen, on the right in South and Central America, there have been tyrants. So sometimes the United States has found itself supporting tyrants to keep the communists out. And that was especially important during the Cold War, right? Because Russia was trying to take the place over, take the world over. That was the point of the Soviet Union's slave empire, was to enslave the entire world. So even when we had to support bad guys like we did with the Contras, we were supporting them to keep the communists out. You know, if you go back, you know, some people don't remember Ronald Reagan. We think of him as this terrific president, which he was. But his worst scandal was this thing, the Iran-Contra scandal. It's still unclear whether Reagan himself had anything to do with it. But people in his administration were trying to funnel arms to the Contras in Nicaragua to keep Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas out. And the reason they had to break the law to do it was the Democrats had passed a law saying you cannot support this government. We want Daniel Ortega in there, okay? And again, both sides were bad, but the communists were worse because the communists were the long arm of the Soviet Union. That's why we were doing it. The Democrats were supporting it. They still support Ortega. 3 months ago, Nicaragua exploded. Is this being covered? No, of course not. You know, and Ortega has set loose his forces. They call them the paramilitaries. When you hear the paramilitary, these are his guys. There was a tax increase, but you know what it is. It's Ortega is constructing a regime that will last past his death. He's going to hand it on to his wife. He's basically becoming king. When I talk about socialism being slavery, that's not hyperbole, because I understand you think, well, it works in some countries. It's always slavery, and all ideas eventually expand to fulfill their own logic. When you say that the money you save, the time you spent working, belongs to the state, ultimately the state becomes everything. So it always comes, this, like I said, it usually takes about 70 years, but usually it becomes a tyranny. And that's what's happening in Nicaragua. The people are rebelling. Snipers are picking them off, the protesters off. This is what happened in Venezuela, by the way, with Cuba's help. With Cuba's help, they went out and crushed the student riots. You know, the students in our country, they go out and say, oh, I had a microaggression, I'm going to protest. And everybody says, oh my, a microaggression, we must do something about that. Here, a sniper kills you, picks you off the roof. Here in Nicaragua, when you say, oh, I want to be free, it picks you off the roof. Now, the left has a way of doing this. They ignore it. They pretend it's not happening. Here is kudos to CBS News, which last night finally covered. One of the enemies, of course, of the socialist, the communist state is always the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is always fighting to get these people out, or usually it is, or should be, and it is in Nicaragua. So Ortega is going after the Catholic churches and riddling them with bullets. So here, just listen to CBS. Here's the guy reporting from the street. You can tell that he's lost his objectivity. He's gotten very passionate in support of the protesters. Here's CBS.
The Ortega regime accuses the protesters of inciting violence that has taken the lives of national police, who claim they were simply trying to restore the peace. It's believed paramilitary forces loyal to Ortega fired into a Catholic church earlier this month as 100 university students sought shelter.
Estamos todos aquí, refugiados, y nos están tirando a matar. Pueden escuchar.
2 were killed. Father Eric Alvarado was there during the 15-hour siege.
Tell us, if you can, what happened that day.
Yo lo describiría como el peor día de mi vida.
The worst day of your life.
He showed us where the bullets pierced the church's icons.
Jesus
is
with you, no matter how bad it gets.
An unbelievable report that you see the church, if you're just listening, you see the church riddled with bullets, Jesus Christ riddled with bullets, with Sandinista bullets. That's CBS reports, and good for them for finally putting it up there. Here's ABC and NBC reporting on it last night. Yeah, nothing. And you know where the best report came from? Evil Fox News. You know, God bless Bret Baier. No kidding. The sight, when you look at Bret Baier, the sight of a journalist actually doing his job is so shocking that you sit there and go like, oh, I remember now. I remember what journalism is supposed to be. And Bret Baier and his team, obviously guided by him, really, they report the news every night. And it's the only place where you can actually get a real report on the news. You know, you just compare it to Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta, screaming questions that don't mean anything and sitting around with a stern face and lecturing Donald Trump about who he's supposed to be. Bret Baier just reports the news. Their old slogan, we report, you decide. He actually sticks to that, and it is really an amazing show. So God bless him. Bret Baier has Daniel Ortega on, and he goes after him on everything. And it's wonderful. The questions were even better than the answers, because you just know these communist dictators, they sit there with a bland line. Putin does the same thing. But play cut number 3 as Baier asks him about the Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church believes they're under attack by pro-government forces. We've seen the images. We've seen the video. You have the auxiliary bishop in Managua tweeting out, the government of Nicaragua crosses the limit of inhuman and immoral. The international community cannot be indifferent. This is a bishop in Managua. Obviously, the Catholic Church believes they're under attack from you.
Well, that responds to a certain way of thinking. Ever since the bishop came to Nicaragua, he's been saying the same thing. Why wasn't he here during the war? He wasn't in the country during the war. He was in Rome. There's not a single priest that we're persecuting. There's not a single priest who can claim that he's been attacked by the government, by the government officials. The church is provided with all kinds of facilities, and the Episcopal Conference, we have no problems with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, we got no problems with the Catholic Church. You know, all right, a couple of priests riddled with bullets, you know, the occasional killing, but, you know, it's not a big deal. All these guys are exactly the same. But this is what gets me when, you know, a while back, we don't have it racked up right now, but a while back we played an old clip of Bernie Sanders in 1985. Where he said, yeah, some people say it's bad when they have bread lines in communist countries. They say it's bad, but it's good because other places they're starving. They're starving, and only the rich people eat. So that was after his trip to Nicaragua. That was in praise of Daniel Ortega, this clown who is now murdering his own people as they protest his communist tyranny.